Good morning, saints. Good morning, worshipers. Good morning, family. Good morning, friends. Or maybe good afternoon, depending on what side of the world you may be on. I just wanted to do a quick message because I had a friend that was discussing spiritual gifts yesterday. And I know that I feel like one of mine is, of course, communicating, speaking, teaching, preaching, verbal communication, interaction, education, trying to gain a higher and deeper understanding. And sometimes I feel that I can express and explain things in a manner that is very unique and is impactful. So today, on this Easter Sunday, Resurrection Day, whatever you choose to call it, I just want to talk about grief overturned. Grief overturned. That could be the main topic of it, but that sub topic is going to be reality check. So if I was writing it down in my notes, I probably would have written grief overturned, put a colon, and then put reality check next to it. Now, as stated, this is Resurrection Sunday. We know that we have gone through the Lent season, and had the crucifixion and the resurrection as it is observed. But just taking a moment and looking at that word resurrection. Resurrection. We know it means to come back, to renew of sort. The one, as you look at the etymology, 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 it talks about word origins and how it traced it all the way down from, earlier times to today's usage of it. And a synonym that I found was that resurge. Resurgent are synonyms of resurrection. So when thinking about resurrection, think about it as a resurgence. Think about something resurging. And basically, I'm looking at the times that we are in currently, and I just see it as a reality check. Because at the time when Jesus passed away, and everything, his whole life, even up to that climatic moment, or that ending moment. Well, I said it right, climax, because it was still something that came after that. It wasn't just that was the end of him when he was crucified. When we got to that climax point, that was a reality check for the world. That he actually lived and carried out his duty, his plan, his purpose. I mean, he's very powerful. I mean, he probably could have said, hey, you know what, God, I don't know if I want to die for him. But he didn't. Jesus didn't. He saw his purpose through to the end. But that was a reality check for the world that was taking place. And in that moment, it impacted the masses. It impacted a lot of people. It impacted everyone. It impacted the world. And there are instances and occurrences and situations that took place in history that impact the masses and impact the world. And we can trace that as far back as BC, before Christ. In 3000 BC, there was a prehistoric epidemic. So there's always been plagues, pandemics, epidemics, and things of that nature, natural disasters. The people still, can think about those people in Tennessee that just recently experienced a tornado, and then those people that just last year experienced a tornado, and then all others that still may be, dealing and coping with that. But just kind of going through a list of some things. Smallpox, yellow fever. Forgive me if I mispronounce some of these things. Cholera, CHOLERA. And then you have the scarlet fever, typhoid, TYPHOID. Or I believe it's typhoid Mary. The Spanish flu, measles, polio. I'm going to go back to polio in a moment. But, and now we have COVID-19. And with this, we see that throughout history, there have been instances of reality checks in some form or fashion. The good, the bad, and whatever in between could be a reality check of sort. I mean, if things aren't really bad, that still could be a reality check that, wait a minute, I could do better, or it could be worse, but let me appreciate where I am. When you falling onto tough, hard times, it's a reality check. When we face certain illnesses and things of that nature, it is a reality check, because we are so often in disbelief. We can't believe that what is going on is actually happening. So it's a reality check. But I was listening to a message earlier today, and my former administrator, one of my first administrators, Principal Van Phillips Sr., he was delivering his message, and he talked about polio. And one of the points that he made was that polio impacted a lot of the people, or I should say not necessarily impacted, but a lot of the people that were at risk of polio are some of the same people that are high risk for COVID-19 and coronavirus. Let that sink in for a moment, because at that time, polio, I think Mr. Phillips said he was born in maybe like 59. I'm not sure, something like that. But before that, polio was running rampant, I think from like 1916 up until like mid 50s or whatever it was. But of course, do your follow up to make sure I'm expressing the situation in context as it should be expressed. But basically, the people that are 65 and older are at high risk of coronavirus. But those are some of the same people who were children during the polio pandemic, and they were at risk. So some of them have gone through, they didn't have to deal with polio, or they may have had and they were able to get the vaccine for it, because later, of course, I think around 55 or something like that, 58, some later 50s, early 60s, somewhere in there, they actually came up with the vaccine for polio. Somewhere between 55 and 61. I'm not 100% sure. I was just listening to him speak about it. But of course, you can do your own research to clarify that point. But basically, some of those same people, those baby boomers that had to deal with polio and that scare, and this was something that was impacting the children. It was something that children were being paralyzed from. So some of these same people had to deal with that. And then think about what the parents were thinking about, what the family members were thinking about. They didn't want their kids to be subjected to this type of illness. And then fast forward up here to 2020, COVID-19. We got people recovering. We got people that are unfortunately dying from it. And I just want you all to take a moment and realize that this is real. Try your best not to get so caught up in the propaganda and the gossip and the misunderstood individuals that are speaking loudly but don't necessarily have all the facts and details to be speaking for someone or to tell someone what to do. So with the COVID-19, I know I've heard people that say, well, only famous people are getting it. That's not the case. I've heard people say weird stuff like, well, I don't know anybody that has it. Well, don't think of it like that. And then I've heard people even say, hey, I don't know anybody that knows anybody that has it. But we shouldn't take it lightly, because I'm going to just tell you something right here. I know of people that have had it and have recovered. I know of people that have had it and have lost their life. I know of people who've had it and then passed it on to a family member, a spouse or a child or a sibling. So just because we feel like it's something that's on the screen or removed for us, it's closer to home than you believe. So just make sure you understand that. Let's get that reality addressed. Now, you had measles, all this other stuff that is taking place, but in that reality, I just want you to know that you can overturn that grief. That grief can be overturned, because things that happen during that time were just letting you know that, hey, we can get through this grieving moment, but we can push on, we can press forward. And now, moving back to the crucifixion, as it relates to a reality check, I was reading a little bit further about it, and I just want to know what else was going on around that situation, around that instance. Well, some things that happened during that, they said that there was a earthquake, and they said there was darkness that fell across the land. So we know that we might be feeling a darkness to us inside of ourselves, or we may be feeling a darkness as it relates to the morale of the people we are around, or the people that we are engaged or connected with in somehow. Or it could be a very cloudy, dark day. But in that, we know the sun will shine again. Now, with this reality check, we need to make sure that we are self-evaluating and making sure that we realize our gifts, our talents, our skills, and begin to sharpen them, heighten them, or apply them in more depth. But we also need to make sure we take a moment and we could realize that we are really we might realize how much help we need. Let me just put it that way. Because some of us acting like we can't live without some of these wants that we have put in our mind or got in our habit or routine to say that those are our needs. We need to make sure we draw that distinction and not confuse our wants as needs. We got to make sure we don't misconstrue our options as necessity. Just because we have an option don't mean we have to take all the options. Or just because we have options don't mean we need to do something that doesn't work for us. Because I wear a size large don't mean everybody wears a size large. There may be some steps and actions that they may have to take that I don't have to take. Because everybody has their skill. Someone may be able to hear well. So we're going to put them out to listen and see what's going on. Somebody may be able to see well, so we're going to make sure we can put them on a post where they can see things and manage things accordingly. Someone may be able to speak well, but we know we wouldn't necessarily have a routine or exercise that's going to heighten this skill for somebody else that needs that assistance, instead of focusing on something that will improve another person or improve ourselves, that is different, that is slightly different. But right now, our schedule has changed completely. All the stuff that we may have clouded and cluttered ourselves with is off the table. So now we can begin again. We can resurge, regroup, and reproduce something great out of this. Because if you think about it, something new comes from grief. Something new comes out of pain. I was watching Unsung last night, and I know Betty Wright, she had the song No Pain, No Gain. And it's oftentimes right there, hand in hand. You got to get through something to get to something. But it's not just going to be this pleasant, happy ride. It's just not going to be that. Okay? But the thing that I want us to be mindful of is that it doesn't matter if it's polio, doesn't matter if it's the flu, doesn't matter if it's COVID-19 or recession or depression. It doesn't matter about all that. What matters is that we can flip that script. We can turn that coin. We can turn things around. Because I want to let you know that, you know what the opposite of grief? Remember I said grief overturned? When you turn that grief over, it turns into joy. It turns into joy. So just note that when they rolled that tomb, when that stone was rolled away from the tomb, and they went in there looking for Jesus, and them angels asked Mary, "Why do you weep?" And Jesus spoke to her. That grief turned into joy. So, whereas we know we've experienced some grief, some losses, and things of that nature dealing with what's going on right now, but you know what? Some people may not have to suffer anymore. That grief, that burden of grief has been removed from them. That grief has been overturned. They can now rest peacefully. And that joy is all they can, is welcome. Let me just say that. That joy is welcome. And now, for us that are still here, we need to have this reminder that has reset our focus in order to have a clear vision for 2020. And I'm not saying it is just coincidental and all of that, but I'm drawing a connection that, okay, it's interesting that we're dealing with such a tough, drastic, realistic reality check right now in 2020. And we know that in 2020, if somebody has 2020 vision, their vision is clear. But we know that with what we're going through, we should be able to say, okay, wait a minute. This is my main focus. This is the line I need to walk. This is the path I need to take. We're not going to sit here and just say, oh, I don't know what to do with ourselves. We're going to figure out something, because we should have something great, something that is joyful, something that is joyous, that we can cling to, share, produce, or help others with somehow, some way with that. So just know that grief can be overturned to joy. Make the most of this reality check. Do your part, do your best. If it seems hard now, joy will come, because right now, you just on the other side of it. Because think about it. If you down right now, you got to go up. If you in the back right now, you're going to move to the front. Last passes to first. You know, you might be the worst, but eventually you'll be the best. So just take that test. Don't let that test take you, because we know that without the test, there's no testimony. Some people may see that glory, but they don't know that story. They don't know what test, what challenges you were taking that caused you to get to the point you were in. They may see the glory, but they don't know that story. But just make sure that we turn that grief into joy. Be blessed.